with us this morning, and to
Thank
say
you for inviting me.
what I say every time, because that's all I can say about
I
you, is
appreciate
that
it.
you are indeed the most outstanding Martin Luther King scholar in the United States of America.
I appreciate that.
And so we appreciate being able to have you to come by occasionally and to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, the civil rights movement, and et cetera. And I think that our history goes back as far as James Earl Ray
That's right.
and
That's
his
right.
wife and all
That's
of that
right.
information,
That's
and
right.
Dr. King and et cetera.
Exactly.
And so you've been with us and you've given us so much information.
Thank
and
you.
so we're simply delighted to have you with us today. Let's start off, Dr. Baldwin, doing this first segment by having you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences over the next couple of few minutes, and during that first segment, and then after that we'll get back into Dr. Martin Luther King himself.
That's right.
And the beloved community. Let's do it
Okay,
from that
well,
perspective.
I'm a native of Camden, Alabama. I grew up in Wilcox County, was educated in the segregated school system there, was also involved in some way in the demonstrations that occurred in Camden. And when I graduated from Camden Academy High School in 1967, I matriculated at Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. And there I also participated in some demonstrations. I was there, in fact, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in April 1968. From Talladega College to Crozer Theological Seminary, and from Crozer Theological Seminary to Northwestern University. And I received a PhD in History of Religions from Northwestern in 1980. But I've had some involvements in the academic arena, some involvement in social activism, teaching, research, scholarship. So I consider my background to be kind of wide-ranging in that regard.
You've done it all, Dr. Baldwin, in a real sense. I think we've said before, you sort of followed Dr. Martin Luther King's academic career.
To some extent,
You're essentially going to many of the institutions
That's right.
that he attended.
With the exception of Morehouse. Yeah.
And then writing all of the books. How many books, again, for the sake of our audience, because I know it's a large number. And,
well, I've written 5 books on Dr. King. I've co-authored 2. Edited 2 and co-edited 2, so that's a total of 11 books on the life, thought, and activism of Martin Luther King Jr.
So I think you're well qualified to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and the beloved community. What do we mean, Dr. Baldwin, during the few minutes that we have before the end of this first segment, what do we mean when we talk about the beloved community and Dr. Martin Luther King's associated with that?
When you talk about the beloved community, many scholars contend that you're talking about the capstone of Dr. King's thought, the organizing principle of all of his thought and activity. By beloved community, he meant a completely integrated society based on love, brotherhood, mutual acceptance, interpersonal and intergroup relations, shared power. He was talking about this racially inclusive ideal, that we should be a society that includes people irrespective of their racial backgrounds, their ethnic identities, their religious orientations, their political philosophies. He was talking about a completely integrated society, and that's what beloved community means. And I hope today that we can talk about the 3 levels on which he developed that vision of the beloved community.
That was his vision.
Yes, that we would become a completely integrated society and also a completely integrated world.
And that's sort of specific to Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, the whole idea of bringing all of those things together under that kind of situation, does it belong to Dr. Martin Luther King?
Well, Josiah Strong, other scholars before Dr. King had spoken in terms of humans coming together and working together. Royce, a scholar by the name of Royce, came up with this idea of beloved community. But there were people like Howard Thurman before King, Benjamin E. Mays, and others who taught King at Morehouse, who also embraced this concept of the beloved community. So it was not unique to Dr. King, but Dr. King was its most prominent proponent.
Very good. And of course, let us take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
All right.
Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. Lewis Baldwin, who's given us some information in reference to Dr. Martin Luther King and the beloved community. And of course, Dr. Baldwin, let's see if we can pick up again at this segment to talk about some of the other things in reference to Dr. King and the beloved community.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that Dr. King's conception of the beloved community has to be understood on three levels. First of all, there's the vision of the New South. If you look at that period from 1954 to 59, when Dr. King was pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, much of that period he was also a leader of the Montgomery bus boycott. He spoke in terms of a new South, a racially inclusive South versus the old South, which was what? Racially separatist, characterized by secessionism and the Civil War and Confederate tradition. Dr. King wanted to get rid of that whole Old South tradition and to bring into being what he called a New South, which would be a racially integrated South, a South, as he put it, that would experience a social, political, and economic boom. That's what he had in mind when he spoke in terms of the New South. He was speaking on a regional level, and this is how his beloved community vision found expression on the regional level. Now, when you get to the national level, you have to speak in terms of the American dream. From 1960 up to about 1964, the American dream metaphor figures prominently in Dr. King's rhetoric, in his speeches, in his interviews. Remember, I said in 1954 to 1959, it's the New South idea. But from 1960 to 1964, he's talking about the American dream, and he's arguing that America is essentially a dream unfulfilled. And our struggle is designed to bring about the fulfillment or the full realization of the American dream. That is the right to access to public facilities, the right to vote, to hold public office. It means economic empowerment. It means the right to the pursuit of happiness. This is what Dr. King was talking about in that period from 1960 to 1964. If you listen to his speech at Lincoln University in June 1961, it's entitled The American Dream, and he's talking about the importance of black people becoming a part of representative democracy, becoming a part of participatory democracy, and having the full rights and privileges of all other Americans. So he elevates that concept of the New South, which is so prominent from 1954 to 1959, to the concept of the American dream, which is very prominent from 1960 up to 1964.
But now also, Dr. Baldwin, there was another idea of the American dream before Dr. King became involved in it, before the information that you're giving us now. And so look at that old idea in terms of the American dream and tell us how that old idea differ from Dr. King's American dream.
Exactly. Now, Dr. King's idea of the American dream, we must remember, was rooted in his reading of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Emancipation Proclamation, America's sacred documents. And he always said that I'm not the first proponent of this idea of the American dream. It goes back to the founding fathers and others, but we have to understand that we have to take that vision further than they did. When they spoke of all men being created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, they were talking about an ideal that we need to always work toward. They were working toward that ideal. We need to work toward that.
Even during slavery, there's an idea that can happen. That can become a reality.
Yeah, Dr. King breaks with the founding fathers. He says, but they put in place a principle that can be universal. So we need to what? Expand on that vision and pursue the American dream in a different kind of way. So he saw the American dream as being articulated historically, but that it's an unfolding phenomenon, and that with each generation, each generation has to define what that American dream is all about and then work toward the realization of that American dream.
As a matter of curiosity, when you say that President Obama's immigration activities is an effort to fulfill this idea of what? And I think that he said that on a number of occasions, in reality, that's what that's all about.
Exactly. You know, the interesting thing, when I think of Obama, and I preface my remarks with this, Dr. King said in '68, just before he was assassinated, that in 40 years, we could have a Negro president. In '08, Obama is elected. That's 40 years.
That's Dr. King, too.
And I think there's a book by Earl O'Cara Hutchison, I think, called From Obama to King. And he makes the point that much of what is happening in the Obama administration is what? The coming to fruition
the
of
fulfillment
ideals
in a real sense of
that Dr. King
that
had.
Makes sense.
Because when you talk of immigration, the DREAM Act, and what Obama has done to increase the chances of Latinos engaging in participatory democracy in this country, it's amazing. And I think that immigration initiative on the president's part is very much in line with Dr. King's dream of the beloved community, because it is a community, it is a situation that involves the coming together of peoples of all racial and ethnic backgrounds to experience the fullness of what it means to be children of God.
Or to be an American citizen as well.
Exactly.
And so in a real sense, I think we've got about a minute and a half during this second segment. But in a real sense, the dream continues under President Obama.
Exactly. The American dream, I said Dr. King articulated that concept on a prominent level from '60 to '64, but he understood it as an unfolding phenomenon. That the American dream is always in the process of becoming, always in the process of being realized for each generation that comes along.
That's what made it a reality and real.
Yes.
It was something that was always in anticipation of others becoming a part of that that early dream.
That's right, that's right. And I might, say that certainly the American dream